But every time I went back looking for Bubba, somebody else was saying, "Help me, Forrest, help me."
It's a rare moment when you watch a movie that makes you question the very playbook you've been using for life. You see an act of courage, a moment of generosity, an example of great kindness, and you think, wow, I want to be more like that. Hey, I'm Brendan Lorenzo, and this is 3 movies that inspired me to be a better person. A quick spoiler warning for all 3 of them, but I'll split the video into chapters, so skip ahead if you need to. And let's begin with our favourite dimwit with a heart of gold.
My name is Forrest Gump.
A man who knows how to go with the flow of life and follow his heart. He doesn't put up any resistance to the turns and twists of fate, much like the feather that lands on his foot at the beginning of the movie. His IQ of 75 means he's not book smart, but he doesn't let that define him or hold him back. And despite all of his shortcomings, he manages to overcome huge amounts of adversity and achieve wild success in multiple areas. He becomes an all-American football player who meets President John F. Kennedy, wins the Medal of Honor for saving his wounded comrades in Vietnam, competes in ping pong at an international level, and starts the multi-million-dollar conglomerate Bubba Gump Shrimp Company. He's the kind of rich that would even get Warren Buffett to take notice. And what can we attribute all this success to? Above all, I think it's his ability to remain present. He's so naturally in the moment that he never overthinks anything. He's not stuck in the past or worried about the future. He shows us how to follow our destiny without resisting it.
I don't know if we each have a destiny, or if we're all just floating around accidental like on a breeze. But I think maybe it's both.
Whether or not we actually have a predetermined destiny is irrelevant, because if we treat everything that happens to us as if it's our fate, then we'll naturally adapt and make the best of whatever situation we find ourselves in. You've probably heard Dan Sullivan's quote: "The definition of hell is, your last day on earth, the person you became meets the person you could have become." I am convinced that the person Forrest became and the person he could have become are the same guy. He's self-actualized. He reached his highest potential because he didn't get in his own way. Forrest shows us the perils of being too intelligent for our own good. He doesn't have all that noise in his head that most of us do. You never see an animal in the wild needing therapy or getting depressed about something that happened 5 years ago. They just get on with their day. Forrest is the same. It's almost like he's not smart enough to hold a grudge or get anxious about the future or ruminate on the past. People are constantly insulting him.
Are you stupid or something?
I'm as stupid as a stupid does.
He doesn't allow nasty people to tarnish his view of mankind. That's why he's more than happy to chat to strangers at the bus stop, because he's an inherently open, non-judgmental person with enough faith in humanity to expect the same level of respect from the stranger sitting next to him. And if the person at the bus stop is rude or dismissive, he'd either not notice or just go, "Well, they weren't very nice," and just get on with his day without giving it a second thought. There's not an ounce of resent in him. He follows his philosophy to a fault when he decides to run for over 3 years on a whim. And logistically, I don't know if I buy this happening in real life. I mean, he said he only stopped to eat and drink, so who's mowing his lawn and paying his taxes? But as a metaphor, I love it. If you wake up at the age of 50 with the sudden urge to learn the piano, do it. Don't question it, just scratch that itch. And when you have the courage to follow your heart, it will motivate other people around you to do the same. By simply following his instincts, he inspires countless people to follow in his footsteps. Literally. But we should be careful to not confuse following our heart with following self-destructive impulses. Forrest's love interest, Jenny, serves as a cautionary tale for how idle hands can be the devil's playground. Like Forrest, she's also a feather in the wind, but she's blown towards superficial, negative temptations, which sadly put her in an early grave. Let's say you need to drive somewhere at night time. You don't have the entire path ahead of you illuminated, but that's okay because you've got headlights and they illuminate 20 meters in front of you, and that's enough to then get you to your destination. Forrest knows how to focus on that 20 meters that's illuminated directly in front of him without being stunted by thoughts of the entire road ahead. I can sometimes procrastinate starting a difficult project because I'm paralyzed by the anxiety of not knowing how it's going to play out ahead of time. But that's life. We'll never know what's coming next. But as long as we focus on what's in front of us, the here and now, then we'll be okay. And what would you prefer? To know exactly how everything is going to pan out ahead of time? That'd be a bit boring, wouldn't it? It doesn't take a big brain to understand this stuff, but it does take a big heart to implement it. Thank you, Forrest.
Okay.
And the second movie on the list is Life is Beautiful, written, directed by, and starring Robert Benigno. Life is Beautiful is a tragic comedy that celebrates the power of play. Set against the backdrop of World War II, our Italian-Jewish protagonist Guido finds himself in an increasingly fascist and anti-Semitic world. He treats all of life like a fun game, and whilst this irritates some stern and rigid adults, it's also intoxicating for others who wish to break free from the oppressive expectations of a dictatorial society. And that's exactly what happens when Guido playfully comes up with all of these different ways to serendipitously run into his love interest, Dora. After she falls out of a barn into his arms, he falls in love at first sight. But she's gonna need a little more convincing, in large part due to the fact that she's already spoken for. So he pretends to be a school inspector where Dora is teaching and sends the classroom into hysterics. Having her class inspected would usually be a tense and stressful experience for her, but Guido turns it into a joyous, memorable one. And she has no idea how he's doing any of this, but that just makes it all the more fun and exciting. He then ends up literally sweeping her off her feet at her engagement party and riding off into the sunset to elope. His ability to connect with his childlike sense of play and wonder wins her over. And that closes the book on the romantic comedy part of the film, and then we enter the second part, where Guido and Dora have a precious 5-year-old son, Josue. World War II is now in full swing, and anti-Semitism has infected the psyche of Italy. Despite the amount of injustice that is inflicted upon them, from his bookstore being graffitied to government officials harassing him, he never plants any seeds of bitterness or hatred in his son's mind.
Andiamo Giosuè, andiamo.
Perché i cani e gli ebrei non possono entrare, babbo?
Loro gli ebrei cani non ce li vogliono, ognuno fa quello che gli pare, Giosuè. Ieri ero con un mio amico, un cinese che ha un canguro, dico si può entrare, dice no, qui cinesi e canguro non ce li vogliamo. Gli sono antipatici, che te devo dire.
Instead of saying, "Oh son, those shops don't allow Jews because they're evil, bitter people," he instead makes light of the situation so that his son doesn't have to get upset about the injustices that they're facing. When they're literally being carted off to a concentration camp, he doesn't want his son to get scared, so he makes it seem like they're going on a grand adventure.
Siamo prenotati, fermi, lasciate un posto, Guarda che fila. Vai, Giosuè, eccoci, abbiamo prenotato, Grazie, vai!
When his son inevitably starts complaining because of the horrific conditions they're being subjected to, his father turns it into a big game where they need to earn 1,000 points to win.
Ma posso vedere la mamma?
Quando finisce il gioco?
E quando finisce?
Bisogna fare 1000 punti. Chi fa 1000 punti vince un carro armato vero.
So when he needs his son to be quiet or hide from the Nazis, instead of panicking and scaring his child, he makes it seem fun and challenging. Even at the end when he's being marched off to his death, he does a silly walk to put a smile on his son's face one last time. Playing isn't just some silly, frivolous thing that the kids do while the adults get the important work done. Play is a vital part of all of our lives. I think that's why we love engaging with stories so much. Whether it be reading a book or watching a movie or show, your body is still, but your mind is in a state of play as it's being transported into another world. Life is Beautiful taught me that when I face adversity or an injustice, getting angry and bitter about it is only going to cause me more pain and won't solve the problem. There's a great Buddhist proverb which encapsulates what I'm getting at here. When a person is struck by an arrow, it hurts. This represents the pain and suffering that we all experience in life to varying degrees. However, when we react to this misfortune with anger, frustration, and resent, it's as if we've been struck by a second arrow which causes us even more pain. The Buddha is quoted to have said, "In life, we can't always control the first arrow. However, the second arrow is our reaction to the first. The second arrow is optional." And Life is Beautiful also taught me to not get so caught up in my own crap that I neglect to add positivity to someone else's life. Having a sense of play is the greatest antidote against the misery of being overly serious, uptight, and grumpy. And better yet, it's infectious to the people around you.
Mamma!
Questo è il sacrificio che mio padre ha fatto. Questo è stato il suo regalo per me.
Abbiamo vinto!
Sì, abbiamo vinto! Gesù.
Primi si ritorna a casa col carro armato! Abbiamo vinto!
And the third movie on the list is Good Will Hunting. Written by Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, this is a story about personal growth, finding a sense of self-worth, letting go of the past, and the transformative impact of human connection when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable enough to experience it. Will Hunting, played by Matt Damon, is a troubled orphan who works as a janitor at MIT University and is secretly a genius. However, despite being incredibly smart, he makes a lot of stupid choices because his deep-seated emotional and psychological issues can't be solved by thinking. The abuse and abandonment that he experienced as a child has left him with very low self-esteem and a fear of vulnerability. So he uses his brilliance as a shield to keep others at a distance, protecting him from further hurt, but also trapping him in a cycle of self-destruction. And he's so stuck in the past, he's still holding on to grudges from kindergarten.
Come on, it's me, Will. Remember we went to kindergarten together.
When he gets convicted for beating up his kindergarten bully, he's faced with the choice of either going to prison or getting therapy. And this is the kind of rock-bottom ultimatum that he needs to finally make a change. It's then through the mentorship of his therapist, played by Robin Williams, that he's able to let go of his trauma and embrace his full potential. The moment he first cracks through Will's tough exterior is when he delivers that iconic speech on the park bench. I get goosebumps just thinking about it.
I bet you can't tell me what it smells like in the Sistine Chapel. You've never actually stood there and looked up at that beautiful ceiling. Seen that. If I ask you about women, you probably give me a syllabus of your personal favorites. You may have even been laid a few times. But you can't tell me what it feels like to wake up next to a woman and feel truly happy.
It's through literature that Will has been able to intellectualize every part of life, but he hasn't actually experienced any of it because he's too afraid. Life is here to be lived, not to be studied from a safe distance. If we have the courage to take risks and place ourselves in uncomfortable situations, we'll be a lot more fulfilled and happy than if we let our cowardice take over and prevent us from growing and evolving. Will is initially extremely resistant to therapy because he thinks opening up and seeking help would make him weak. But the opposite is true. It takes strength to leave your ego at the door and ask for help. Expressing your emotions doesn't make you weak. It takes courage to express your truth.
It's not your fault. It's not your fault.
Especially as a man, it's an important lesson to learn that being masculine doesn't mean being an emotionless robot who's always in control. Badass characters like James Bond who never cry and always win are fun, but they set an unrealistic standard for what it means to be a man. Someone who's wise, thoughtful, caring, and connected with their emotions like Robin Williams' character, now that's a man. Due to his past neglect, Will subconsciously believes he's unworthy of love, and mixed with his abandonment issues, he rejects others and pushes them away before they have a chance to reject or hurt him. When we are open enough to allow ourselves to love someone else and to be loved, we are inherently giving them the power to hurt us. To love is vulnerable. When he has an amazing first date with his love interest, Skylar, played by Minnie Driver, he ends up ghosting her out of fear of being hurt.
So call her up, Romeo.
Why, so I can realize she's not that smart, that she's fucking boring? You know, I mean, you don't... This girl's like fucking perfect right now. I don't want to ruin that.
Maybe you're perfect right now. Maybe you don't want to ruin that.
I love Robin Williams' response here. He's saying, you're afraid of how she might change and impact you, and you won't allow yourself to be vulnerable enough to let that happen. His therapist sees right through his bullshit, but it's a lot harder to see through our own crap. We'll often make choices from a place of emotion, and then we rationalize those choices after the fact with some excuse that suits us. We gotta be careful of the stories we tell ourselves up here.
People call these things imperfections, but they're not. Oh, that's the good stuff. And then we get to choose who we let into our weird little worlds. You're not perfect, sport. And let me save you the suspense. This girl you met, she isn't perfect either. But the question is whether or not you're perfect for each other. That's the whole deal. That's what intimacy is all about.
And the beautiful thing is, it's not just Will who was changed by the therapy, Robin Williams' character is also affected. He was stuck in the past in his own way, unable to move on from the death of his wife. Helping Will to move on from his trauma allowed him to do the same.
Yeah, I figured I'm just gonna put my money back on the table and see what kind of cards I get.
As well as being open to receiving help, we should also look for opportunities to help others, as even from a selfish perspective, it benefits both parties. Then towards the end, Will's best friend, played by Ben Affleck, also calls him out on his shit, and it's the final straw Will needs to release himself from the shackles of his past.
I mean, you're sitting on a winning lottery ticket. You're too much of a pussy to cash it in. And that's bullshit. Because I'd do fucking anything to have what you got. So would any of these fucking guys.
Don't waste your potential, and if you're lucky enough to have opportunities, take them. The last thing keeping Will tied to his old life are his brothers from the orphanage, who for a long time were the only ones to show him loyalty and love. But a true friend like this will encourage you to go and achieve success, even if it means you won't be able to be their drinking buddy anymore. Seeing Will go from a troubled young man to someone who begins to realize their value and potential has been a huge inspiration in my own life. It's taught me to confront my fears, to seek help when needed, and to cherish the relationships which contribute to my growth. So which movies have most impacted your outlook on life? Drop a comment below and let me know. And if you'd like to see some of my other videos, then I'll drop my 2 most recent ones right here. And also, I get a dopamine hit every time you subscribe, and I'm in need of a dopamine boost. So please, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys soon.